Okay, so it's the full moon, and we got back late we ended up finding this stainless steel stove or sink unit on Kijiji tonight randomly. Ended up driving like an hour away from our house to pick it up. It was like $110. It's amazing. Anyway, so it's the full moon, so it was really cool because we ended up driving under the full moon, so I got to watch the full moon for like 2 hours. So I just got home and it's Sunday night, so typical Sunday night me watches Long Lost Family, which had me obviously thinking about my own life and this whole journey out to the West Coast, and obviously my biological father and blah blah blah. So for like an hour, well, the whole time I was driving down to pick up this sink, I was thinking about, what I want to record next. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot of is I've always sort of wanted a forum to express my thoughts and the things that I've learned. And I feel like this journey is sort of going to create that space for me. And so part of this is being vulnerable and sharing my thoughts on things and just being authentic. And so I just kept thinking, you have to record. And the other side of me is like, no, don't do it. Nobody really wants to see it. Nobody wants to hear it. So I don't even know if I'm going to post this. I probably will because I'll force myself. But I just want a record of my thoughts. So that's why I'm recording it. And yeah, so I'm outside the farm. The bus is behind me. It's like midnight right now. And I don't know if you can see the full moon. Oh, yeah, you can. Cool. Okay, so, and there's Optimistic Prime. To me, she's a girl. To James, she's a boy, I think. I don't know. Anyways, so where I'm at. The wedding is in 21 days. I'm feeling like something's definitely shifted for me. I'm feeling way more confident in our plans. I'm feeling way more confident in where our life is headed. I'm feeling more confident as a parent. Sterling is healthy. He's 3 months old. So we've gotten through the first 3 months, which is super exciting. And, now we're in this space of really clearing out our space and figuring out the final, parts of the bus. Today I actually got free carpeting and foam on Kijiji from like a guy one street over from us, and it's bright purple carpeting, which is super exciting because we wanted something fun. So I'm excited that it was random bright color. And I just keep imagining myself on the road, and I keep getting to this image in my head of me being on the ferry with the bus. First of all, it scares the shit out of me to put the bus on the ferry, but I know it'll be fine because tractor trailers go on the ferry, right? But I guess a few days ago I saw a picture of me on the ferry going to meet my biological father, and just that image of me, and then what I wrote about it, and then what I wrote about it a year later. And then how I felt about it seeing the picture is it's the last ferry you can take in Canada. It's the furthest point west. And it was really a journey for me into the next space of my life. So I texted my biological father that we were thinking about moving out west. And in my life, I've been known to say big things are happening and then they don't happen, or, when I was there, I was like, I'm going to come back here one day. I'm going to move here one day. And people say that and things don't ever happen. So I just sort of threw it out there. As soon as we started talking about it, I ended up telling like everybody that as many people as I could think of that love us, just give them a heads up so that I didn't blindside them, because one of the things I've learned in life is if you don't tell people what's going on as it's going on and you just sort of give it to them all at once, it's a little overwhelming. So if you give it to them at the same speed you're getting it, then at least they can process it in their own way, and in my case, not worry about me. Because I definitely have some really close people in my life that worry about me. So I texted my biological father that we were thinking about moving out west, and then I didn't hear back from him. And I heard from his partner, and she was just concerned about a few things I didn't know about in BC, like medical care and insurance and things like that. And when we first came up with the idea, I started getting a little panicky because I had this feeling that he wouldn't really want to be a grandpa, because that doesn't seem like his personality, and it was sort of like messing with my head a little bit. And James just reminded me, like, we're not going for them, we're going for us. Like, this is what we want to do for us, and that's why we are deciding to go to Nanaimo. Not that, like, Victoria is super expensive and way too expensive for us. And Nanaimo, like, there's a bunch of pluses about it, but also that it was like 3 hours away, 2.5 hours away from Victoria. And, you know, James just reminded me, like, you know, yes, we're going to be in close proximity, but he doesn't have to be part of our lives. And that if he wants to be, he can, you know, easily visit, but that there's no pressure. And when James told me, this is like a month and a half ago, and when James said that, like, it just really dispelled a lot of my anxiety. Like, it was almost like I was okay with him not being part of it, but then it was like that little kid rejection in me of, like, sort of wanting it and knowing that it wasn't going to happen. And it was just really strange because I was watching Long Lost Family tonight, and one of the ladies, like, she's really eager to have a father person in her life. And she's older. And, like, I mean, in her late 20s or early 30s. And she finds her father, and her father wants to have that kind of relationship with her. And I just found it mind-boggling because that is not the situation in my life. And so, you know, when you first hear her story, like, I thought, oh, God, help us. Like, it's really hard to find, you know, your biological father that actually wants to be part of your life. And so it was a beautiful thing when, like, he was excited, he wanted to, like, it just meshed. And watching that show really, it just solidifies some of the ideas I've had about genes and timing in life and serendipity and things that you just don't understand, but they play a perfect role in your life. And, you know, when I finally got to read a letter from my biological father, like, I read it out loud to a few of my friends, and they agreed with me. They said what I was thinking, and that was that he writes like you. And it's almost like when I read what he writes, he's so eloquent. He's a word person. And I find some kind of, like, connection, I guess, in that way. And so I have, like, this, you know, I have a little kid longing for some pretty big things. I mean, originally it was just to meet him and to thank him for, you know, just whatever role he played in my becoming me. And I mean, ultimately, the strange part of all this is the fact that he wasn't part of my life. The fact that I'd always sort of grown up knowing that he lived on a boat off the coast of Vancouver Island. I like slowly over time integrated that into recognizing that you were allowed to follow your own path, and that there was something that called to me about the West Coast. So it made sense that it called to him. And growing up, I understand how hard it is to move. And my mom had always wanted to go out west, and she just never did. Like, I guess she was scared of being on her own, of course. Like, I don't think if I was a single mom, I would be, going out there. Although I've asked myself that, and I've promised myself that no matter what happens in the future, this is the trip I'm making. So there's a lot of emotions around this. So 2 weeks ago, I finally got a letter from him. And so the other aspect of this is that he's a very private person. So he asked me when I first met him to like not post any pictures of his face on Facebook. So there's only a couple pictures of him like walking in front of me and one from the back of him hugging me. But there's nothing of him on my Facebook, which was really hard for me because I'd shared this with like everybody I knew, and then to not have any pictures of him. And I found that sort of like really ironic that he would have me because I am very vulnerable and very open and very honest. So, and I'm not scared of being an online presence and being known in the world. And so here I have this biological parent who really wants nothing to do with that part of my life. And so choosing to do to document this for Optimystic Prime, the light just went out, obviously. Choosing to do this for Optimystic Prime, one of the things I actually considered was how that was going to land for him, because I'm recording this journey. So how am I going to share this aspect of my life, because it's a huge aspect, while also respecting his privacy? So I think that that's a really important thing online in general, that, you take ownership of yourself and you honor people who don't really want to be part of the internet thing. And I guess for me, there's a few reasons why I've sort of accepted it, knowing the risks of being exposed in a public way globally, potentially. One, I've traveled the world anyway, so I've met a lot of people, and I save people. So I have a lot of friends on my Facebook, and I know them all, and I remember them all. So that's one thing. Second thing, I'd like to imagine that in my lifetime we might actually leave this planet and go exploring other planets potentially, like that we as a human race can come up with a better plan for space travel. And if that's the case, if we can bring Star Trek into existence, if you want to be on a spaceship, they're going to have to know everything about you, and you're going to not be able to hide anything. And so I think in a really weird way, I've just come to terms with this is the future, and that I have to trust that being vulnerable and being open about exactly who I am is the wave of the future, if that makes sense. And there was another thing I was going to say, but I don't remember right now. So here I have this father who I'm drawn to, who is a lot like me and a lot like James, I think. I think him and James are going to get along really well. I definitely have a dream of someday, him teaching us how to boat. But I have kids. And he doesn't want to be part of a family. Like, he's made it very clear that's why he lives on a boat off the coast of Vancouver Island and not back home, and that he wants to be isolated, and he doesn't want any requirements to, like, he doesn't want any expectations to be part of a family. And it's really interesting for me because I really believe that it took 32 years. It took 29 years to talk to him and 32 years to meet him, because I had to come to a place in my life where that was okay. And up until this point, I sort of always wanted a dad, and I'd been craving that. And I mean, obviously there's aspects of that that are still live inside of me. But when I found him, it was by coming to a place in my life where I didn't want anything from him. I just wanted to say thank you. And that's really what opened the door to meeting him, was not wanting anything. And so here I am, deciding to move like within 3 hours of where he lives, and really honoring the fact that he doesn't really want to be part of our lives. And although, like, I'm disappointed, I guess, I completely understand. But also, it, in a weird way, makes it easier for me to continue to share my life and not worry how much it lands in his world, where I think we modify ourselves a lot when it comes to people we love. And we don't like, for me, I don't like making people feel uncomfortable. And so one of the hardest things I have about sharing my story, especially in a public forum, is I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, and that is inevitable. So I'm really struggling with that aspect of my personality. And but at the same time, like, I'm moving 3 hours away from my biological father. And that's a huge deal for me. And I don't know what will happen out of that, but it's such a huge part of my existence, is growing up as a single parent, with a single parent and as an only child, knowing that I was conceived in love. So it was this really strange reality. And I think that it played an enormous role in who I've become in the world, and how I really believe that you're allowed to follow your dreams. And I told myself I wasn't allowed to have kids until I knew that I could still be myself with kids. Because I think it's really hard for people to be themselves with their kids, because they have all these ideas of what you're supposed to be like. And so they really try to fit themselves into that mold. And I think that that's where a lot of anxiety and depression come from, is like, I gave my life up for these kids, when, you know, in order to teach kids properly, you have to inspire yourself so that you can teach kids how to inspire themselves. Which is why this crazy idea has come to sort of happening, is because it's really important for me that my children know that anything is possible. And the only way I can teach them that is if I live it. So it's very hard because I'm trying to talk factually, but like, obviously this is embedded in my beingness in a way that's very emotional. So I'm getting married in 21 days. And it's just this backwards thing. And yet it changes something in my being. And, you know, the fact that we're getting married at the Warsaw Caves, and that played such a significant role in my life right before and while I was like, I knew James, but before we actually hooked up. I feel like that 2-month period, I felt like I was just like in a pocket of the universe where everything was serendipitous and everything made sense, and I saw the signs, and it was just like, it was almost overwhelming how right it all felt. And I feel like I'm in the same kind of pocket right now. Like, I feel like everything is just happening perfectly. Like, we wanted a stainless steel sink. The best one we found was like $200, and it was freestanding. It had like 2 shelves on the side. Let me see if I can turn on this light and then see if you can see it. Probably not. Anyways, so like, can you see that? It's huge, and it has like full cupboards underneath it, and it's gorgeous. Like, I can't wait to show you guys. It's beautiful. Like, it's like a $500 sink or something, and I just feel like all the things that they say, like, if you are in that pocket and you believe, you can manifest things. And like, that sink feels like I manifested it, because I hadn't checked Kijiji in like weeks, and I finally was like yesterday, like, you need to start checking. I'm like, because I was really curious about properties on Vancouver Island, so I've been looking and just seeing what's out there, what we're looking at. And then I started researching like leasing Crown land, and then all of a sudden I went back to like the Bob Cajun area, and I was just scrolling randomly. I've never done this, just all ads. And I just scrolled. And then I finally came across that was posted earlier today in the Kawartha Lakes. Pardon me. So it's just really serendipitous. So I don't know where my relationship with my biological father is going to go. Unfortunately, I don't feel like I can share much of that unless he gives me permission, which I think might take a while. What I might do is just record them for myself, and then down the line, if he does give me permission, then I can share my thoughts of like the journey. But in the meantime, it's a huge aspect of my life. And it's sort of like my happy ever after. And it really is a new journey. And he made it very clear in his letter that, like, you know, he's drawn there, so he would never discourage me, and that he hopes my plans are working out. But please don't expect anything from me. And if your kids come on board, I'd be really worried about them breaking something or hurting themselves or falling overboard. So please don't expect your kids on board my boat. So in the nicest way possible, he basically told me the things that I was most worried about, but I'd already sort of come to terms with, and that I'm okay with. So I've always sort of felt like my life was designed for me to be independent and a complete alone. And I just feel like this is just another one of those moments that validates that. And, you know, it came from the feeling of abandonment. My life, I felt so abandoned by every single person that loved me or that was part of my existence that I loved. I felt abandoned by everybody I loved. And it took me a lot of years to realize the lesson was not that I was abandoned and unlovable, but that everybody had their own life. And, you know, who am I to say this is what's supposed to happen? And that the way my life has gone is exactly the way it had to go for me to learn the lessons I needed to learn to get here. Because the huge life lessons, like abandonment, that it's not about you, it's about life, and that people have their emotions for whatever reasons, and they have their history, and you were born whenever you were born, and the abandonment has nothing to do with your innate lovability, let's say. And that each of us as human beings has to recognize that we're lovable regardless of our upbringing, regardless of who left us, regardless of the abandonment we feel. And love those people despite their not meeting societal expectations. And that a lot of times when people are not part of our lives, it's important. So I feel like that has really trained me to have a relationship where, like, in The Alchemist, they say, Khalil Gibran, I think that's his name. I don't remember how to say it. Says, like, two trees standing apart where their roots are intertwined and their branches are intertwined, but you're two trees. And I think that that's been a really important image in my head when it comes to having a relationship, is that we are fine separate. And if anything happens between us, the other one will be okay. And just knowing that. And yet, like, I always told myself, you know, like, most people break up. So, you know, who are you to say that 20, 30, 40 years down the road, you're going to actually want to be with this person? So I don't know what the future is going to hold. And I know that James and I are on the same trajectory right now, but you never know. And so one of the most important things for me was that if in the most unfortunate of events, we grow apart, that I am with somebody, that I create babies with somebody who would respect me as the other parent and always want to be part of my children's lives and love them. And so, you know, I feel James has that capacity. And so we have come to this relationship independent, fully okay with being independent, fully okay and recognizing that we can do it on our own. And so there's not this, like, dependability where, like, you have to be somebody for me. It's you are you, I'm me, and we come to this exactly who we are, and with no expectations of the other person changing. Except, you know, awesome if we grow together, because there's no way either of us is not going to grow. And right now, I just feel like I'm on the precipice of, like, a huge shift in just my beingness, about myself, about my self-confidence, about my body image, and, you know, how I want to teach my kids how to be confident and strong in their own bodies. So yeah, so I make these recordings so that I can, it's easier than typing, way faster. And I just want to document where I'm at, because I know that tomorrow I'm going to feel different. Or also, sometimes I don't feel compelled to talk about these things. So when the little voice in the back of my head is like, you really need to record this, like, this is important for you, I have to listen to it. And that's actually another thing I wanted to do a video about, was intuition, and how I learned what voice to listen to and what I struggle with, and, you know, where the intuition is. So that's actually a video that I'd like to do sometime really soon. So April 29th, April 30th now, it's like 1 a.m. probably, 2018, Bobcaygeon, Ontario, and I am Amanda Jones, and that's the full moon. That's her bus in the full moon. Super cool. Here, maybe the lights on. I'll show you the bus before I go. It's super exciting. James has been doing so much work. We went and visited my closest friend today, and James worked on the bus, so he's torn out the chair, he's taking out the rest, and yeah, so it's coming along. All right. Peace.